Hello, everyone. It's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we're back here today again with another edition of Top 5 from Aether Revolt. And today we are going to be checking out the multicolor cards. And once again, I'm joined by Chaz. How you doing today, Chaz?
I'm doing well. We're back. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah, so the multicolor cards are unique in Kaladesh because there's actually only four multicolor rares and mythics in the entire set, and then we have one land which we mixed in. So, unlike our other colors where we kind of picked out our five best, we're just talking about all of them today. So, every gold card and the land are all going to be covered. So, the sweet thing about the multicolor cards is they contain some planeswalkers. So, let's jump right in with our first planeswalker. Ajani Unyielding. So, Chaz, card advantage, removal, loyalty counters. What do you think about the green-white Ajani?
Well, it is green, but it is multicolored, but I still have to embrace it. So I think it could get there. It's going to have some really niche applications. I just, as more cards were revealed and just the state of standard, I mean, I don't know if I want to be giving my opponents 13 life when I have to deal with their Emrakul, and I don't know how I feel about whiffing on its +2. That would be awful. But I mean, with Rishkar, it gave me a little bit of extra hope to, well, if I want to be ramping, this is a pretty good card to ramp into. It's not all bad, and it does kind of give you an extra chance of refilling your hand. Obviously, you could live the dream of brainstorming in green, which I've only ever imagined, because Harmonize is not the same. But again, Path to Exiling in this format just doesn't seem as good as it would normally, which is almost like blasphemous to say, but it's just the truth. So we'll see. I mean, luckily we got the right Ajani, or maybe we didn't. So, but they don't know that. They don't know about the blooper where we had the wrong one, but maybe that was the better one.
You gotta respect the Planeswalker deck Planeswalkers. If there's one thing Nissa taught us, you gotta respect. So, as far as Ajani, my biggest concern with Ajani, its abilities are powerful. If you build your deck right, probably gonna draw you, let's say 1.5 cards a turn. If you're mostly creatures, killing stuff is good. The ultimate should win you the game, most likely. So it does a lot of good things. It's just so hard to play other 6 mana spells in our current standard that aren't Emrakul. Emrakul just has such a constricting effect on the format and makes it really hard. If there's any way that's going to work, I think you're right. You got to be ramping into it pretty quickly in a creature-heavy deck. So it could be a good top end there, almost like the big Garruk was, where you had a similar plus where it would draw multiple creatures a turn. So if you can ramp into that in a deck that's just full of creatures and you're drawing a bunch of cards each turn, maybe you can kind of overwhelm an Emrakul. But I'm a little skeptical that any 6 mana walker can really dominate in a standard where Emrakul's coming down turn 4, turn 5, turn 6 on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, luckily it looks like we have more options in Emrakul now, but again, that doesn't mean that certain options are still going to be a little obsolete. Unfortunately, Ajani looks to be that way, but again, hopefully that can change in the future.
We have another Planeswalker, another multicolored Planeswalker, Tezzeret the Schemer. This one's interesting because when it was first spoiled, I was very low on it. It looked like it didn't do much of anything. But we did say, and I did say, that it could look better as the rest of Aether Revolt was revealed. And with a lot of the cards we've seen and the prevalence of artifacts, I still don't think Tezzeret the Schemer is insane by any means, but I think it is definitely better than it looked when it was spoiled as one of the first cards in the set. What do you think, Chaz?
Yeah, it's not going to define standard, and I kind of get attracted to like planeswalkers that just have a ton of loyalty, especially with a card like Heart of Kiran floating around, no pun intended. But even just the line of like Heart of Kiran into Liliana the Last Hope into Tezzeret, like that almost just seems good enough already without necessarily having to build around any one of those cards. So yes, I do agree that it has certainly looked a lot better now with Aether Revolt revealed in its entirety than it did when it was just like a standalone card that just kind of came out on its own, and we didn't really see all the set, and it was kind of like a bummer, needless to say. But it's usually those cards, Seth, it's usually those planeswalkers that we don't like at first that ends up doing really well for themselves.
Oh, that's true. Our track record with Planeswalkers is not as good as I would like. I think that the +1 of making what's essentially a Lotus Petal looked really bad at first, but the improvised mechanic, it seems a lot better. It's a way you can play your free jam dragons and all these, the demon that has improvise for really cheap, and you can use it repeatedly. So just having a bunch of these artifacts sitting around can actually kind of support a deck. So maybe they're there not so much to be sacrificed, although you can use them for that when need be, but just to generate mana by tapping to cast your improvised stuff. So that made me a lot higher on Tezzeret, and being able to get a bunch of artifacts and then -2 to kill something is actually really good, and you don't have the Game 13 life problem. Obviously, it's going to be challenging to kill an Emrakul. That's a lot of artifacts on the battlefield, but it does just unconditionally kill 2 creatures, which is pretty relevant if you have a bunch of artifacts sitting around to power it up.
Yeah, and its ultimate obviously will take over a game because it kind of is self-sustaining in the sense that as long as you could just keep creating Ethereum cells, you will keep getting 5/5s.
Yeah, and it isn't that far away from Ultimate. It comes in at 5.
No, right.
2 turns of plussing. Yeah, it doesn't win the game immediately like some of the other Ultimates we've seen, but turning an artifact into a 5/5 every turn should get you there eventually. Well, next we have another Planeswalker-related card, but for a Planeswalker that's not even coming for another 3 or 6 months, Dark Imitations, kind of the mini Cruel Ultimatum, likes Nicole Bolas, or Bob Bolas. So, Chaz, what do you think about this one? Is it good before we get a new Bolas?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know if there's to say about this card where it's kind of awkward to have these foreshadowing cards because we've had them before in the past with like Eye of Ugin and stuff like that, and it's just not much to say when you don't know what the purpose of the card is, right? Like we had Eye of Ugin back in the day, and it was referencing a card type that no one even knew what was, none of them were even in existence yet, so it's really hard to determine what's going on. My hope is that Dark Intimations is relevant due to the fact that the Bolas card will be that much better that it relies on this card, right? Like maybe this is the reason it can ultimate when it normally couldn't have because this isn't in your graveyard, right? So maybe that's some wishful thinking. Hopefully this gets better.
Yeah, I agree. If you disregard the bottom half of the text and just look at it as sacrifice a creature, planeswalker, discard a card, blah, 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 that's not good enough for 5 mana. That's just not a playable thing, especially considering it's going to put you into Grixis, which means you got to be in 3 different colors that aren't even incredibly popular in Standard as it is, so I don't even know what deck you would play this in, even if it was a great effect. And it's definitely not good enough like Cruel Ultimatum, where it's going to push you to be a Grixis deck. This isn't a reason to play Grixis. So I'm kind of with you. Any evaluation is premature, and hopefully it all adds up and makes sense what we see when we see what the new Nicole Bolas looks like. So hopefully there's a reason for it. I'm going to be super sad if it doesn't really interact in any special way with a future Bolas Planeswalker. So
yeah, that will be really sad. Hopefully it gets there.
Well, I guess all of our multicolor cards are somewhat Planeswalker related. So the Gatewatch has a new member with Aether Revolt, and that member is Ajani. Ajani took his oath, put some counters on things, makes Planeswalkers cheaper. Chaz, what are your thoughts on this one?
Bravo, Ajani. You are now part of the Gatewatch, and the oath is really good. I mean, it's a little awkward, and it was one of the cards that was previewed kind of early on, right, Seth? So everyone kind of really got hyped about it, turn 3 Gideons and all this stuff, and that hype has died down a little bit, but that doesn't mean that we won't see this card. I mean, it does good things. So it's like an early Anthem or an early ramp spell. So it has that duality, or you can think of it as a ramp spell that isn't totally useless later on in the game. So again, there's really some good interactions here. We mentioned it in an earlier video, SRAM expertise. You get a few servos. You maybe had like a Thraben Inspector or something like that on the battlefield already. You can drop your Oath of Ajani. That's a really good play. Or you can use it to, churn out some really quick planeswalkers. I mean, you can conceivably go into Oath of Ajani, into Gideon, into Nissa Vital Force, into the green-white Ajani, a full turn ahead of schedule. So maybe that's even like good on its own.
Yeah, I did a whole video on this card a couple weeks ago, and my final conclusion was I think you need to be able to take advantage of both halves, which means you kind of have to be like green-white tokens or something. I think if you're just ramping into planeswalkers, a high percentage of the time, something like Servant of the Conduit is going to be just as good. If you're just pumping up your creatures, we have other options which are probably just as good. One of the collective cards, a white one, can do it. We have various Anthem effects, but in a very specific deck where you're looking to kind of go wide with tokens, maybe SRAM's expertise, servo tokens, and also follow that up with Gideon's and Nissas, and maybe even Ajani himself. In that deck, I think Oath of Ajani is a potential all-star. As far as the Oaths go, this is not, to me, an Oath of Nissa, which is probably the all-star of the Oath cycle so far. I think it's more of a, maybe an Oath of Liliana, an Oath of Jace, something that you will play, but you need to be in a fairly specific deck to make it work.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit better than those because it just has a lot of different applications. Like, the other oaths are a little linear, but this is no way usurping Oath of Nissa as the best oath. I mean, I think that has the best playability across all formats for, I guess, until the end of time, or maybe until we see more oaths and the Gatewatch expands. But this is really good. I mean, this is up there for sure.
Well, we have one more card to talk about today, and technically it's not a gold card. Instead, it's a land, which facilitates gold cards. Spire of Industry adds a colorless mana, or adds a mana of any color if you have an artifact. So, Chaz, one of the first things people said about this card is Affinity, Affinity, play it in Affinity. You play Affinity, do you play this in Affinity?
Well, I mean, we have access to like Mana Confluence and City Brass already, so we don't play those, and we've had access to them, which is essentially what this card is. And I mean, I just don't see it. I mean, Glimmer Void is the best, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere anytime soon. Obviously, you have scenarios where you get Stone Rained, but I think, I mean, in the same sense, for this card, I can argue, well, if you deal yourself a couple points of damage, that's the margin for losing, for a couple points of damage. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there. My thing is, we basically had this card already, so I don't know. It's definitely not an Affinity.
I think there's some upside just because I was thinking a deck like Lantern Control, where you're playing a really high percentage of colorless cards, but then you also have a few really important multicolor cards, Abrupt Decay, stuff like that. And the big upside of this compared to a City of Brass is when you want to cast your Lantern of Insight, you don't have to pay life. You can just pay colorless mana. But then if you do need to Abrupt Decay, you can bite the bullet, pay the life. It definitely doesn't replace Glimmer Void in my mind, but I think if you're playing an artifact-heavy deck, you would definitely play this over City of Brass or whatever because of that upside.
Yeah, it's much better. It's much better in Lantern Control, I think, than it would be in Affinity. So Affinity doesn't really matter. Like, if you don't have artifacts, you're going to lose. So that's just a thing. Again, I know in the past there has been times where you get Stone Rain and you get blown out, and that does happen, but the percentage is so low not to play Glimmer Void over this, where you don't even have to pay any life. But I can definitely see the argument for something like Lantern Control.
As far as standard, I actually think this card will be very good in multicolor vehicle decks, which typically have an artifact most of the time sitting around. And even if you don't have an artifact, it's not like you can't tap it for mana, and then you're trying to splash, I don't know, your Mardu colors, you're trying to splash a blue card, a Dispel or something, or Ceremonious Rejection in your sideboard. Playing this alongside Aether Hub actually gives you 8 lands that tap for any color, and the opportunity cost is fairly low because you don't have to pay life when you don't want to. So I think it really does enable certain decks in Standard as well, most specifically multicolor vehicles out of the decks we know now, but there could definitely be more that pop up with all these artifacts that are coming into the format with Aether Revolt, so I could see this being a really important land to Standard for that reason.
Yeah, I agree with you. Absolutely. Like, even the red base artifact aggressive list, Bomat Courier, Built to Smash, like, that is a great place for this, and the Mardu vehicles list, like you said, as well. So definitely has some Standard applications. I don't know where it shows up in Modern, but, you know, the Lantern control list is a good place for it. We'll see about Affinity. I don't know. Maybe it edges in as a one-of, but it's not going to replace Glimmer Void, all its copies, by any means.
That's a really good point about Bomat Courier and stuff, because one of the hallmarks of some decks in Standard is they're essentially almost artifact aggro decks, Bomat Courier, Scrap Heap Scroungers, but they're artifacts that you cast for free, but you really want colored mana to activate, to get Scrap Heap back from your graveyard, to sack your Bomat Courier. So something like this allows you to avoid playing tap lands. I played a deck that was essentially a mono-red beatdown artifact deck, but it was playing like Foreboding Ruins to be able to activate Scrap Heap Scrounger, and it was just so clunky to have this land that would come into play tapped and make me play off curve, and it was just really painful. I would definitely just play 4 of these over those Foreboding Ruins to avoid the untapped land problem in a deck that's like primarily one color, but you want to get Scrap Heap Scrounger back or something. So I really like the potential of this in Standard. Anyway, Chaz, that's our multicolor cards from Aether Revolt. So, do you have a favorite from our list today?
Well, it's going to have to be Oath of Ajani. I really like the card. I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be good.
Well, I'm going to go with Spire of Industry, actually. I really think that out of all the cards, it's the one that I'm most confident that I will be playing somewhere. Tezzeret could be good. Ajani could be good. The Nicole Bolas Wrath or Edict thing, we'll have to wait and see 6 months from now. But Spire of Industry, I definitely will be playing, maybe even in multiple formats. So for that reason, I think I'm going to have to pick it as my favorite multicolor card, even though it's technically not multicolored.
Well, a good choice either way.
Anyway, Chaz, thanks so much for hanging out and doing this. It's been a blast.
I love these, Seth. I mean, this is so much fun. Yeah, I mean, I think this just wraps up a really good set. I'm glad this kind of puts the punctuation mark on the Kaladesh block, and I think it's going to influence Standard quite a bit. I mean, we've mentioned on the podcast, it's good to break up the monotony of what's going on, and hopefully they kind of are pushing this pendulum back and forth so Standard doesn't stagnate too much.
Yeah, I think so too. The power level of this set is very high. I expect that it will shake up Standard in one way or another. You still got the Emrakul Aetherverse Marvel thing to deal with, but it feels like there's enough fast broken cards in this set that other decks might just be sped up enough to compete with that, as crazy as that sounds. So I haven't been this excited to brew Standard decks in a long time. I'm really looking forward to this set. So
yeah, me too.
Anyway, everyone, thank you so much for hanging out and watching. Again, big thanks to Chaz for hanging out this week and doing these reviews. Anyway, that's all for now. We'll be back next time with, I guess, Amonkhet. So until then, we will talk to you soon.
Yeah, we will. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Again, check out all the content on MTG Goldfish. It's really great. Seth, this has been awesome. And hopefully everyone enjoyed it. We will do this again soon.